Hey there, welcome. This video is kind of a continuation of the reactivity video, and I wanted to talk about how the minor unethical patterns in our consciousness are quite rampant, and they make it difficult to be happy. They make it difficult to abstain from various forms of suffering, and when we promote them, accept them, and keep them going, we habituate others in the world to do the same. And so I want to preface all of this with a couple things. So one, I want to preface it by saying, just because certain patterns are unethical doesn't mean people are unethical. A pattern being unethical is basically just, it causes suffering and we don't need to do it. That's it. We can argue about ethical theories, we can argue about what we're allowed to accept, what's agreeable to allow. It doesn't matter the perspectives very much. It just matters that there's a reality that people are suffering, and there's things that cause that suffering. And some of those things are unethical mindsets and patterns in our consciousness, not just how we act in the world or what we portray, and not just if we're living, our dream, if we're doing things we like. Our happiness is much more connected to the whole of things. And this is where the non-duality portion comes in. And when we realize non-duality, when we realize we're just all one, then we will naturally come to abide in this holistic essence of all existence, and we're not gonna, we won't be able to justify or continue causing patterns of suffering as much as we earnestly can practice. So there'll be people in the world in different states, different situations, different environments. They'll have different levels of resources and access to different aspects of the world. And some might need to survive more, and this means that it's harder for them to change certain habits or certain patterns that might cause suffering. But by realizing oneness, there's this natural tendency to do our best for that, especially since we're infinite. It's it's no sweat off my back to try to not harm myself. That's really that's part of non-duality. That's it's inescapable. There's going to be nobody seeking finite pleasure at the expense of other people's pain and going to be oh yeah, I'm infinite, I achieved infinity. They're not going to keep doing that. It's just the antithesis of the actual non-dual experience. And mine kind of flips on and off, like I mentioned before. I've had many awakenings. I haven't sustained it permanently, obviously, but it's kind of, just like everyone's born with 2 arms and 2 legs, almost everybody, there are some consistencies in enlightenment and realization. Ethical participation in the dance of existence is part of it. And you're going to have very small amount of outliers and situations that are contextually okay, this one's a bit different, self-defense, yada yada. Overall, we're not going to spend any energy or time justifying harming the infinite. And so a lot of people going through non-duality and a lot of people just going through life don't see this. There is a little bit of I'm seeking non-duality and the pinnacle teachings to get a conclusion and just be done with it. I mentioned this, and there's no conclusion video. Conclusions don't exist. That's not a thing. That's not how it is. And so when we seek non-duality, or things akin to it, like the highest realizations of the yogis and the sages, we want like that pill. We want that little sweet taste, that like, oh, everything's perfect, everything's infinite, oh, I've already achieved it, oh, I don't have to do anything. That's why I speak of ethics, modern synthesis with like psychology and stuff. That's why I talk about karma yoga. That's why I talk about a lot of things that are more like daily things that we can do, or we ought to do, or will generally be good to do. That's why I participate in the world and don't just like keep regurgitating, it's all one, it's all infinite, there's no existence, or it's all empty, or it's all Brahma. I don't like just repeat this like a broken record. I participate in the vibratory quality and the unity of existence, because that's what we're here for, and there's no way around that. Like, even if you disagree, guaranteed you're gonna want to go have a treat of a food you like, or watch a video that you like that creates a vibratory experience that you chose to value over even regurgitating all is Brahma and all is Shiva, whatever. So this preface is all to just say, even when we realize non-duality, we have a reason to contribute to the world. We have a reason to participate ethically. And we have a reason to understand the depths of ethics, of what it means to be a sentient being, what it means to be happy, what it means to feel love. Because we're never going to really, I earnestly think that like we're never going to leave that pull of divine love, of extreme bliss, or it doesn't matter what the state name is, but we're going to be pulled towards that ephemeral goodness and away from the suffering, no matter what. Even if we have to get to a point where we fully shut down all labels and all reactivity, so suffering and pleasure don't exist anymore, because we don't even use those labels and we don't even react in those ways, that is still part of being pulled towards that state where suffering doesn't exist. And it's often described as bliss and great compassion and serenity and so on and so forth. But I wanted to speak about how we have these little minor unethical patterns just in how we think and how we relate to the world and how we go about interacting with other people and other beings, and how we have ulterior motives in regards to them, and we don't realize it, or we've conditioned ourselves to think it's just normal, it's okay. And anything can be normalized to be okay. And anything like racism and slavery were okay at one point, but it doesn't make it right. And I'm not comparing like minor, nitpicking, vice-oriented perceptions to the atrocities of slavery. I'm just comparing the logical reality that like just because something's normalized doesn't mean we should continue doing it. But one thing that is really, I just don't hear it talked about. I feel like we're too prideful, or it's like people are too sensitive to really take it on, is I think people don't realize how much they lie, how much they fudge the truth, how much they kind of like don't say things out of fear, or don't say things because they want to impress people, or do say things because they want to impress people, exaggerate. How many people judge others, like put others in a box in their head? How many people make assumptions about others, make assumptions about the world? How many people blame the world? How many people like create situations where they're the victim, or create stories and narratives that are like inaccurate to blame some other person or party. How many people keep justifying habits that harm the world? How many people try to stigmatize others? So like, I'm a vegan. I'm like pretty hardcore vegan, and that's because it's the better thing to do to not harm other beings. That's it. There's never going to be, it's not about I'm a better person. It's just not killing a thing when you don't need to is morally better than killing the thing. People hate hearing that. The fact that I'm saying it like this on purpose because I want it to trigger people listening a little bit to see how we will stigmatize somebody doing the right thing because we're so attached to the pattern that does cause suffering. We're just so ingrained in our lifestyle to do it and lifestyle to think about it. So we'll demonize beautiful people trying to help just to continue doing negative things. Other things we'll do that are just like amoral are internally are like getting really jealous. Getting jealous and not looking at the jealousy, and instead we get angry at people, we get spiteful, we try to put them down in our head. That's another thing, just putting people down in our heads to make ourselves feel good or to make ourselves feel like we're better or we're the more successful or we're the smarter or we're the prettier, whatever. We want to like win at something, so we need another being to literally be below us perceptually, like evaluating other beings as worse than ourselves just so we can feel okay in our skin. These are all like literally unethical patterns that when you stack them up with 8 billion people and go for a couple hundred years, it's like, it's terror. It's tumultuous tides, and just it doesn't feel good, and it's hard to communicate, and it's hard to have community and cooperation, and we're just stuck in this cycle of all this. Some other random things we do, like we agree with the individualization of reality, which is a lie, and we just look out for ourselves, and anything we tie to ourselves, like our close family, our wife, our kids, maybe our relatives, our mom or dad, maybe close friends. And so we only fight for them. We don't really care about anything else. We require so many other beings to function and do work for us, so we can just have like a chair, just to have a place to sit. Think of just all the random little things that had to happen, the forest and all its critters and the plants and the tree, and then the people who made the machines to cut the tree and make the chair into pieces, and the mines that had to be utilized to make those machines, and the screws that keep the chair together. If there's fabric, then a field of fucking cotton or flax, and then people across the world had to work and make that. And if it was made in a factory, there's underpaid workers in that factory making sure things run appropriately. Once again, all the mining, all the exploited environments and ecosystems to make sure that factory is running both energetically and where all those pieces came from. And then we ship it some vehicle over across the world that uses petroleum. Like, I'm not like, none of this is being like, these are all bad things. No, it's just like we individuate our lives, and it's inconsistent, and it's irrational, and it's not honest, it's not authentic. We rely so much on the things outside of our bubble, more almost exclusively for some people at this point. Just like, don't even rely on the people in our bubble. We really just rely on all the foreign beings outside of our bubble, yet we don't care about them at all, and we give all of our love to our wife and kids and coworkers and friends and close relatives, and sometimes not even that many. Like, that's a lot for some people. Some it's really just the self, just our own body, our own pleasure, our own advantage. And this is normalized. This is, especially if you're good at it, if you work hard at that, you almost get praised. And praising competition, praising the putting down of others, praising exploiting others, praising even praising harming our own health for the sake of money, for the sake of success. These are all just normalized, conscious patterns that happen all the time in millions and millions of people, and they're unhealthy and they're unethical. They're causing suffering, and they're causing suffering disproportionately to all sorts of different groups of people. And that's like just a few. There's so many little things that people do with their mind that aren't ethical, and we don't talk about them. Most of the time when I was studying psychology and different behavioral therapies and stuff, very few, I'm not saying it's not out there, but very few are addressing the fact that we have these unethical patterns that are relying on the suffering of others. They're relying on the devaluing of others, and they're causing us unhappiness. I think part of it's because people that get maybe really depressed, like dysfunctionally anxious and depressed, it's more those negative perceptions are like pointed more at themselves, and the pathways to dealing with anger, which might be more pointed towards others, are a bit different than things that we practice in cognitive behavioral therapy, rationality therapies, mindfulness-based therapies, so on. But it's still, I think, those things are lurking quite a bit. I still think when we devalue our own being too, any being, any body, any personage, the more we label and limit and devalue it, that's unethical, where we're creating suffering and lies. And it's hard to say it's unethical. And some might say that's an impractical thing to call it. But it is kind of what it is. We can't just normalize it. We can't just be like, oh, it's allowed. We just need to do it so it doesn't hurt, so it doesn't feel bad. But that's like, oh, we just need to, it's allowed to harm other beings in certain circumstances, but let's find ways to spiritually bypass it or mentally bypass it, and so we don't feel bad. That's not the solution. They're just unethical in nature, and it's a different type of unethical than like stark events like kicking a dog or stabbing somebody. They're micro unethical things that are very permeating in like many people, and they build up over time and they become kind of big things. And the beautiful thing is when we actually learn to look with our mind, with our mindfulness at that, and to not react, not like, oh no, I'm a bad person, not like continue the labeling, and don't be like, oh no, I'm a great person, no, none of this is true. Don't do that either. Just look and accept that, all right, there's still lots of things to learn and lots of growth to be made, and that's fun, that's cool. I'm gonna like create a positive reaction to the fact that I got shit to work on. That's ideal. And then work on it. Because once we realize that, oh man, we're like harming the universe, just even with our mind, that's when we can really dive into the practice of ahimsa consistently. And that's also when we can start. It's also what helps us find the people that aren't going to exploit us. We find the people that are just living their life, and they don't really put other people down. They don't abuse others internally. They don't need others to be in a negative state for them to feel good. We find the lovers. That's our family. We find the people that actually love. They might not fit the mold of what we're used to. They might not look the way we expect them to look, but we find the true hearts. And there's nothing, everyone has a true heart, but it's clouded by all these tendencies. And the more we can flush out and kind of transform ourselves and not really have internally unethical patternings, the more we can help others do that too and help them be happy. And I'm mentioning this not even like as like a relation to non-duality or anything, only in the sense that when you realize non-duality, you realize the infinite morality of relating to all existence, because it's all one being, it's all the same infinity without walls. And to have access to it, we must be it, and that means every sentient being. And we were going to rest in what's here, not in a hypothetical. Not in a hypothetical, like, oh, well, there's infinite universes, and there's infinite universes of pain, infinite universes of suffering, so I don't need to do anything. Like, no, it's like, no, I'm here. There's a person in front of me. They feel pain. That's me. That's us. It's all one. That's what's here. I'm gonna do something. That's that's a part of non-duality. But this isn't even like about how that relates to non-duality realization. This is more about how I just find it's not in the conversation. I just never hear about it. Like I've watched a lot of psychological content. I've talked to psychologists. I've done trainings in different therapies and stuff. I went to university for psychology. I don't really hear how these kind of toxic mentalities are causing ubiquitous levels of suffering and dissatisfaction. You hear a bit. You hear the reactivity one's the main one. Like having a belief, it's wrong. You've been trained to react negatively, and you have behavioral coping mechanisms that are unhealthy that keep that loop going. And so we're going to find out how to, fudge that a little bit and make that go away and transform that. And it's effective and it's good. But some of the reasons we even have these beliefs is actually because of like a whole slew of other beliefs. And it's all just like an interconnected web that we didn't choose, that we just popped into this world and were affected by our environment and the viewpoints of other people and the experiences we had in this world. And some things are normalized that aren't actually good. And when we can take a step back and have that maturity to realize, oh yeah, there's a lot of, it's not just that these mental patterns are unhealthy, like they're not, or they're untrue, they're actually morally reprehensible to a small degree, smaller than arson for sure, but every morally incorrect or negative force ought to have that mindful, conscious, rational interactions to transform those. Just like the big ones, like when somebody murders somebody, there's consequences. When somebody sexually abuses somebody, well, there should be consequences, and sometimes there are. And we get really up in arms when there aren't. Or at least some people do, and they should. Just like we should take action when we realize, oh man, there's even these micro habits, these almost invisible micro habits of the mind, of our how we look at the world and treat the world and value the world and all its constituents, and we do that negatively, illusory, devaluing beings for no good reason other than our own gain, pushing other people down, needing other people to be exploited or pushed down for our own gain, only being happy, only creating positive reactions when those things happen. These are all patterns that if we really want to be happy, if we really want to enjoy life and have a nice, serene, ubiquitous, calm, compassionate energy and feeling state, then we have to take care of those unethical patterns in and out. And how this relates to the ultimate goal is that the ultimate is so beautiful and intelligent and perfect. We are here in this flesh pattern, this societal existence, this planet, for a very abstract reason, a deep abstract reason. It's not the reasons, may not be the same as human reasons, like I cooked a sweet potato because I like sweet potato. That was the reason, I put this laundry detergent in the laundry because it is better for heavy soil and I had heavy soil. Like those are reasons. Those very reason can be very anthropocentric. So there's a kind of a purpose, a melody, an intentionality. There's some kind of intelligence beyond human intelligence for why we are humans, for why we are here now and not somewhere else. And so diving into spirituality for the elimination of reality, or it's all empty, or it's all God, or escapism, or whatever. I get it. I've been there. I go there some days still. But really, if we appreciate the perfection of infinity, then we appreciate being here now in this with each other. And we appreciate that we are together, that it's not just some separation of me and then blah blah others. It is us. And to treat us well on all layers without exception is how we really rest in the serenity of God, of infinite self, of whatever existence is, of the great perfection. This. And things like cognitive behavioral therapy are very good for specific things, especially anxiety and depression. But I find many people experience all sorts of suffering, just not to the extent that they can't go about their day and enjoy things they enjoy and go to work and stuff. But it's still there, and it's still affecting the world, and it's affecting each other, and it trains other people to kind of also live in the, I suffer a bit, it's all good. But the more we can get rid of the ones that are our own cause externally, from like diet and addictions and habits, lack of exercise, how we speak to others, who we hang out with, those can all impact our suffering level, and we can choose those and we can slowly change them. But also, like I said, all the internal things, whether it's just us having the habits of reacting negatively when we could react differently, or we're very attached to various illusions and various unethical patternings. One is just using other people, just like you give attention to people that can give you things. They can help you become more famous, or even just like popular, or they might help your business or make you money, or they're in connections with other people, so you have a motivation to be around them, or they are attractive and they can maybe help create orgasms in your life, so you have that ulterior motive to schmooze them. Or somebody can help teach you a thing and you don't want to pay for it, so you go towards them. I say these things, none of those are like full stop bad, especially when we're transparent and we communicate it and it's consented upon. Then it's fine. It's like all parties are aware and we're good to go. But a lot of times we don't, and a lot of times what happens is we ignore other people, other beings, because they don't give us anything. So we devalue them and we make their lives worse just naturally. Doesn't mean give a bunch of love and attention to every single human. It's just when we can let go a bit of the ulterior motives and needing to use somebody, needing interaction to be transactional, we can have a more discerning, equalified interaction with everybody. But I just hope some of this resonates. I hope it allows us to kind of self-reflect and think about things. Because the more that we can take on these patterns that we can't control, like I said, the external thing, diet and habits and exercise, and then these internal ones, and then interrelational patterns, the more we can take on the ones we control, the ones we really can influence heavily, the more we can discern the injustice in the world, the more we'll have energy and clarity to fight the actual malevolence, the actual big exploitations, the things that are really, really yucky. But in the midst of this chaos of self-created problems and vices and sufferings due to our imperfections, it becomes a very confusing world, and it's almost like we don't have the energy or time or even the vibration to tackle other more diabolical issues like big corporations and animal exploitation and status exploitation, like exploiting poor people with slumlord patterns and blah blah, genocides around the world and child exploitation, human trafficking, and certain criminal behaviors, fraud. There's a bunch of really bad stuff, really intentionally evil, malevolent, highly critical situations, more than I judge Vanessa at work and then I feel weird throughout my week, and I'm not entirely sure why, because I'm creating this value structure in my head that demotes other people. But when we get rid of that, especially just even a good chunk of it, not all of it, and it might not happen instantly, we can band together a bit easier and cooperate and take on the real fights. But it's hard when we almost keep justifying imperfections and normalizing unethical behaviors from the small to the large in our life, the whole gradient. We keep it's fine, it's normal, whatever, I don't want to deal with it, or I'm lazy, or no, I'm not bad. We keep these loops going, it's their fault. And then we just get desensitized to the real, more prominent evils in the world. And we almost don't even want to listen to it or deal with it, which I get. But if we want a nicer, less painful world, and we want to be happier just for ourselves, even just selfishly, this is one pathway that's people are going to have to face eventually. Otherwise, we hit a plateau of joy and love. So thank you so much for watching. Om Sai Ram.